what's your role as a producer? How do you see yourself? I mean, because as a jazz producer myself, sometimes you can have more to say than other times.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because it really depends on the artist and what their strengths and weaknesses are. Some artists may need more help and guidance in terms of planning the record before you get into the studio, in terms of what's the concept, or is there a concept, what's the repertoire, who are the best musicians for this project. And in other cases, the artist may have a very clear vision of what they want to do, and it's just a matter of doing everything you can do to help make everything go smoothly, and taking care of the logistics that they may not want to take care of themselves. And really importantly, being a pair of objective ears in the studio. I think there's a natural tendency for any artist or any musician to kind of focus mostly on what they're doing and what their thing is, what they sound like in a particular context. As a producer, I look at my role as being a more global view. How does it sound, not only musically but sonically, not just the leader but the side artists? How's the balance? How is it really a great take? It may be a great take by the lead artist, but if one or the other of the sidemen maybe are not playing up to their best. So just really guiding the whole process with objective ears, I think, is important.
Do you do all your recording at Fantasy Studios?
Not all of it, but some of it. The Nina Freelon project I did a couple years ago, we did the whole thing at Fantasy, recorded, mixed, and mastered. Karin Allison's last record we recorded in New York, because Karin's based in New York and the musicians she was using on the project are based in New York, so it made better economic sense to just fly me to New York than to fly everyone else out to Berkeley. But so we recorded in New York, and then we did some vocal re-recording in Berkeley and mixed and mastered in Berkeley on that particular project.
Do you have an engineer that you work with almost all the time?
Well, in New York, I like to work with Josiah Gluck. I've been working with him for several years now. He's also one of the house engineers at Saturday Night Live.
Right.
He was speaking of Karin Allison, her breakout album, Ballads of Remembering John Coltrane from 2001, got 2 Grammy nominations, one for Best Jazz Vocal Album and one for Best Engineered Recording Non-Classical, which is a category that encompasses all genres outside of classical, and Josiah engineered that one. So
really?
It's a pretty remarkable achievement, I think, for an engineer to get nominated for a jazz record in that category. So he's a terrific engineer, and I like to work with him whenever I can.
I mean, I have my favorite engineer too, but what is that relationship? I mean, that's a very key relationship, right? Where you can work with somebody and they can almost read your mind. Do you have that with him?
Yeah, in some respects. I mean, a lot of times we'll be working on a mix or whatever, and he'll do something, and I'll acknowledge it, because we're thinking exactly the same thing at a certain time. I think it's also important to work with somebody that you mesh with personally, because this stuff should be fun too. It shouldn't be work. It should be fun. This should be the stuff that really is the soul enriching stuff, and the stuff that makes putting up with everything else worthwhile, because you get to do this. So for me, it's not just the talent of the person, but it's also who they are as a human being, I think, is important when you're working and spending so many hours together in a studio. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that there aren't times when you have to work with difficult people, and that's, I think, also part of being a good producer, is having the people skills to deal with difficult situations and to diffuse difficult situations, to diffuse problems rather than exacerbate them.
Yeah. Tim?
On that subject, how do you go about diffusing a problem when you're in the studio, trying to get the best performance you can out of the artist? Like, do you have a specific method? Do you like to be in the live room with him? or in the control room? Like, how do you go about fixing a problem when an artist they just can't seem to get it? How do you go about something?
Yeah, it depends on what the problem is. Sometimes it's just a matter of recognizing that the artist is tired and maybe you need a 15, 20-minute break and suggest, the artist go outside and take a walk and clear their head. I think also, wherever possible, and invariably when you're at all the planning in the world, there are going to be things that come up in a recording session that you don't expect or you don't plan for. Little technical problems that can happen in even the best studios that may cause a delay in the flow of recording.
Did you ever fire a musician?
I've never fired a musician at the session, no. Have you?
You get it right the first time?
Have you?
A couple of times. That's, if you don't get it right when going into it, you got to get it right while you're there. I mean, there's no reason to wait. But yeah, it happens sometimes. But.
Well, one instance, I was working on this, producing a recording for Jazz Times Magazine's 30th anniversary. It's called the Jazz Times Super Band, and it featured Bob Berg and Randy Brecker, Joey DeFrancesco, and Dennis Chambers. And they were doing Freedom Jazz Dance. And they were playing just an amazing take, and we were recording analog, and the 24-track analog machine just went out. It just died on us in the middle of the take. So I didn't want to stop them while they were, because we were, but I let them finish, and they walk in their room, and let's hear that back. And I had to break the news to them. And again, in a situation like that, I think it's important to be calm, be positive. So what else can you do? You just try to encourage a positive environment and while the engineers are working on fixing the problem. But fortunately, they came back and did another take that was even better. So.
Well, that helps. So do you record analog even today?
Not very often. We mostly record digital, Pro Tools HD a lot of times.
Right.
It's just so much more convenient. The costs are lower. It's much easier to work with in terms of editing and mixing.
Sometimes we would, haven't done this in a few years, but record on Pro Tools, then mix to a half-inch tape. Do you do that?
I've heard of some engineers I don't do that myself as a producer. It's not like something I would insist on doing. But
do you have anything? Do you help pick out the mics? How far in depth do you go with it?
I let the engineer do that, and the only time I jump in is if it's not sounding right to me. I'm not going to say, hey, use this mic on this person.
If you hire a good engineer, you expect that they're going to do their job. Right.
And there have been some instances where I said, that may be a great mic, but it's not the right mic for this vocalist. This is not how her voice should sound. And you try some other things till you get there.
You said earlier that when you're producing, you sit there and you try to listen with an objective ear. Can you tell me what an objective ear is?
What I mean by that is typically each musician on the project, even though you're hearing everything, when they're listening to a playback, they're kind of more focusing on their role and what they're playing. And when I say an objective ear, listening to the whole take as a complete entity, also listening sonically. Does it, it may be a great performance, but are there any problems with how it was recorded or how it's being recorded that we need to adjust? So all of these things I'm listening for is, is a musician out of tune over here, or somebody do something over there that detracts from what the singer's doing, all of those kinds of things.
Okay.
I mean, it's not entirely objective. It's also going through my own subjective filter too. But I like to think that the subjective filter of a producer is a little more objective than any other individual, perhaps in the recording process.
I kind of liken it to being the first audience, and you get to hear it first, and you can just respond to it. Does this give me goosebumps? Do I like this? Right. What do I think? And then you can open your eyes and actually try to do something about it. Right? It's pretty cool. Well, I think it's about time to go, so thank Nick Phillips for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you making the trip, by the way. Appreciate it.